Start.
Yes.
Good evening and welcome to this December 11th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting of the Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Pohl?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Fried is absent. Trustee Hatch?
Here.
Trustee Rappin? Here. And Trustee Ryder?
Here.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the non-agenda items and visitors for public comments. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. And I do not see anybody in this room willing to address the board. Is there anybody else online?
There's one person participating online that is not a panelist at this moment, and if they would like to raise their hand and talk about something that's not on the agenda, please do so, and you'll be recognized. No, sir.
And I say we move on. Thank you. Next would be for general business. First, the Committee of the Whole will entertain requests from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. Do we have any such requests tonight?
No, sir.
No, moving forward, therefore. The first item is the consideration of the minutes from the November 27th, 2023 Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes for these minutes?
There were some minor changes that were circulated earlier, and I presume that the motion was to reflect those changes?
Yes.
Great.
Are there any more comments on this document? I did not see any, so thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
It's a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, and the motion carries. Next would be item 4B, a discussion regarding the police pension fund contribution and assumptions. Drew?
So this is picking up from a conversation that began back in September at the Finance Committee meeting, talking about various assumptions that the village was following based on advice from the police pension fund's actuary. And there were a variety of scenarios put forth in the information in your packet, movement in various variables, and we have Kyle Bang and Kathleen, what's her last name, I'm sorry? Manning from MWM Consulting here this evening to walk us through various scenarios, as well as talk about the exhibits that were provided and talk about some of the practices of the police pension fund. So is, Kathleen, you're going to start? You'll have to unmute.
Presto.
There we go.
Yes. Again, thank you for inviting us. I apologize we weren't able to come up personally. I expected to be able to do that. I had an accident and broke my shoulder, so I can't drive and can't do much of anything else either, but I'm good. So at least this way, virtual meeting. I think I talked a little bit with Bettina on some of the issues, and we can go through the exhibits and to try to illustrate some of the concepts. But I think one of the concepts that is, regardless of the assumptions, the cost of the pension plan is basically equal to the benefits that get paid minus the investment earnings on the assets. And all of the assumptions do is try to establish a budgeted way to pay for things with estimates about the future in terms of how things are going to happen. So that's kind of an overriding. The assumptions themselves do not predict the costs or what's actually going to happen. They estimate it, and they estimate it based on several different assumptions, which we can talk about.
Can I ask a question regarding that and just ask whether what you're trying to do then is calculate the amount we ought to contribute this year and presumably the out years as well, but that will ultimately result in a 90% funding in 2040?
Right. It's the funding policy, it's not articulated.
95? Is it 95?
It's been 95%.
95, I'm sorry, 95. And so what you're saying is that you calculate that 1.2% with the assumption of a 7% discount rate, 1.2 million with the assumption of a 7.0 discount rate will get us, we are successfully on the path to getting to 95% in 2040. Is that, what would you say the margin of error on that is?
Well,
And ask that because we have a very small number of pensioners, right? And so if we had 1,000 pensioners, your margin of error would, in my basic understanding of statistics, be able to be much smaller, law of large numbers. But with 15 to 20 pensioners, there has to be quite a wide margin of error, right?
there is a margin of error. The most significant issue, I mean, you have a pretty stable employee group, and you don't have wild, significant changes. The biggest demographic, and that's what this would lead to, a number of people, would be in duty disabilities. Because if you were to have, several duty disabilities, that would end up having a lot of impact on the liabilities. Because
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are so few employees, the percentages that are applied to estimate a duty disability, are 5%, 6%, or something like that. And so that means basically on the actuarial or the mathematical projections, you're not even projecting a whole person being disabled. You're projecting pieces of people being disabled because everything's fractional.
So as soon as one person is disabled, then we've blown the model. If two people are disabled, then we've blown the model, not to mention people living beyond the mortality tables, right?
Right. But yes, but the mortality tables have been made more conservative over the past 3 and 4 years. And if we'll look at later some of the historical numbers, you'll see that the funded ratios were higher, 10 years ago, but that's partly because the mortality tables back then were not nearly as conservative as the ones now.
So what do you calculate? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What do you calculate the margin of error or the standard deviation for this percentage of 95%?
I wouldn't say that there's huge fluctuations from year to year because the assets are the other part. The assets have more to do with the contribution levels, and so the return on assets is what we're talking about, than so many of the demographic changes, because we're funding for people, even if they leave or they retire, a little earlier or a little later, we're funding a big portion of their benefit is always being considered. So it doesn't have such a dramatic effect. And there's estimates about early retirement. If somebody retires maybe 1 year earlier than estimated, it'll have a minor effect. But the asset performance has a fairly dramatic effect.
Yes.
Even though on the funding side, it's smooth, what we call
Right.
smooth. The gains and losses are averaged in over 5 years. And the other part of the analysis is that the interest rate or the discount rate used for funding, in this case, we're talking about 7%, which is what has been used over the past years. And we showed some illustrations of what it would be if we change that assumption about future earnings to 6.75%, for instance, or 6.5%. As the discount rate or the assumed return on investment is lowered in the calculation, it automatically increases the accrued liability and the subsequent contribution, because what isn't paid for by investment earnings is paid for by contributions in these models.
Understood. And we've underperformed in the last several years, and therefore our contributions are higher than they might have been had we performed at, say, 7% over the last several years, right?
Right, and the other thing is an actuarial assumption about investment performance is long-term. So
Yes.
it isn't meant to be adjusted, every year or two or something like that.
Right.
And it's meant to be, a long-term assumption, and the contributions and the liabilities are being estimated for the year, but also over time. I mean, the idea of funding this is that it's, you're funding it over several years, not all at once. And so some fluctuations are going to happen, and, the models generally can absorb, some level of. The question then is, how conservative do you want to be with respect to, for instance, the assumed rate of return? 7% at the high end. It's not unreasonable, but it's at the high end. And so to the degree you don't meet the 7% assumption, there'll be investment losses that get calculated into the calculations in the following years. And if you have a lower rate of return, 3.75, to the degree the investments the assets earn more than that, then there's gains that are factored in. And the other consideration here is we don't know a new consolidated fund. We don't know how that's going to work out. How is it going to be especially, successful or more successful than the villages fund itself, or less?
We don't know that, and moreover, we don't control that in the least, right? And so your exhibits 13, 14, and 15 show differences in rate of return, actual rate of return, when that's actually a lever that we don't control at all, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to understand is how you set 7% as being the appropriate percentage, because we have now surveyed many, many of our other much larger neighbors, which presumably have a much larger pension plan for their police. Then they don't all have below 7%, but we are on the high end, as you recognize. I think I saw one that is 7.25%, but they're already 80+% funded. So those numbers, I think we're clearly on the high end. What puzzles me is how that number gets set, especially given that we have such a small number, and therefore our margin of error is more sensitive. One person gets disabled and our numbers get thrown off, right? One person lives to 10 years longer, God willing, than the mortality tables say they will, then our numbers are thrown off. So we have a very sensitive to one change number. So what I'm trying to understand is how you come up with 7% being the appropriate one when plans with much larger dollars to work with and much more larger numbers to spread the risk over are doing 6.5. Just the neighbor to the south, Lake Forest, is doing 6.5. It seems to me we're being much to the, I think, chagrin of those who heard this. We're not being physically conservative in these assumptions. We're being fiscally, might I say, reckless. So can you tell me why 7% is the appropriate number for us now?
We presented these results on several different assumptions with exactly the idea of a level of conservatism being built in, and also with the idea of what the police fund has recommended as 6.8% for their investment return. That doesn't mean 6.8% is right, or it doesn't mean 7% is wrong. We benchmarked it against some asset allocations and different estimates of future returns based on those assets. I don't know that we have all of the police fund allocation information, but that was one of the options. I think I was also asked for a recommendation a little bit later, and we put forth 6.75. as a recommendation based on the fact that it added more conservatism into the contribution amounts and allowed for some cushion, let's say, if the assets are not returning, which is the most important aspect really of this. If the mortality tables are conservative, if somebody lives a year or two longer, that the differences and things like that are very smooth. You really honestly don't notice. And for every person who lives longer, there's somebody else who terminates earlier or
Yes.
something. So the demographics aren't the issue.
But
So
the law of large numbers is an issue, right? Wouldn't you say that having 20 people makes a small, one-person movement, extra person disabled, significantly more impact than had we had 100 people and one person became disabled?
Sure, exactly. And in fact, in pension plans where there's only a single participant, they may not make any assumptions about withdrawals from the group or early termination, anything. They'll just fund it as though it was based on a solid number at age 65 or something, or age 55, whatever it is. So yes, to the degree you have fewer people, you have the potential for higher variations from year to year.
I have a question following the remarks from Trustee Ryder. So choosing between 6.5 and 6.75 and 7% return and our assumption of return, I remember the last conversations we had, that was, okay, we made an assumption as, I don't remember what was our assumption, 6.5, but the rate of return we saw historically for past 10 years was 5.5. And so from a return standpoint, where are we going to, 6.5 might not be, no, 6.5 is actually too much, even too much of an assumption. We should go below that 6.5 to be assuming it's going to be 6% to factor our expectation in 2040. And the second thing I would like to ask is, I read we are assuming reaching the goal at 95% in 2040. I don't understand that 95% because it should be 100% by 2040 given state mandates. So what do you think about these two things?
The state mandates 90% by 2040, and it mandates it under a funding method. It's a calculation nuance that generally is a lower dollar than the entry age method, which is what we are using and what the funding policy has been. So 95% is an amount. There has been some philosophy about whether or not governmental entities have to fund to 100%.
I got you. Thank you for that.
Because they have, they're ongoing entities. They're not like a corporation, which might go out of business, and then there's, they'd have to have the complete assets in order to fund the plan. So 90% is what the state has mandated. 95% was what there were discussions, I'd say as many as 7 or 8 years ago, about whether or not it should be 100% just because of the nature of the governmental taxing authority and the long-term nature of the entity, that it wasn't necessary to always be at 100%. That's a policy decision, for the trustees.
Thank you, but what about the point of, are we going to reach the goal of the funding as expected by 2040, given that for the past 10 years, our assumptions have not been verified? How do we correct that? What do we do about that? And how do we correct to reach a target?
Well, each year, the difference between where you're expected to be and where you are is added in as a gain or loss, and it's spread over the remaining future years to fund. So you're going to get to 2040. In 2040, you're going to get to 90 or 95, whatever you determine is the goal. But it'll be by adjusting the contributions if the assets are over or underperforming to get there.
Well, but the point I was making the last time we met was, this is a fine assumption and I'm fine with that. It's a fine way to modulate the fund and I'm fine with that, except that our assumption has not verified for the past 10 years. And so whereas we assume 6, it really returns 5.5. And so we probably need to change our assumption. And I think we left the meeting on that note.
The other aspect of that is that it's a whole new world to some degree with respect to the investment performance under the consolidated funds. I mean, presumably they have access to types of investments that the village wouldn't have had because of the size of its fund. And that was one of the reasons for consolidating assets, that they would have access to more lower cost investments and higher performance investments just based on the size of the funds and to be able to do that. So I think the other thing with pension assets and investment is it's forward-looking. You know, what's ever happened, we don't rely exactly on the prior historical performance. You can look at it, but it also is a matter of what's happening going forward.
I think I'll chime in. It sounds like 95% by 2040 is a fine goal to have. It sounds like based on what we're contributing right now, we will get to 95% by 2040 because it is self-adjusting. And if we underperform in some years, then the contribution will be higher in later years. I think what the concern that I'm hearing from you, Mr. President, and Trustee Ryder, is what if our assumptions don't come in? It just means we'll be paying more to catch up later because we're obligated to do it. If we want to be a little bit more conservative at the 6.8 that the police recommend, or at 6.5 or at 6.25, I think that's up to this board to make the decision. And it would be just great to have the data to understand how that would impact us in terms of our contributions on an annual basis. That money comes from the I call it the annual fund, the general fund. And that would just mean if it was an extra $200,000 or $300,000 to be more conservative, we'd be taking that away from capital. We can always change our minds later. It would be great just to understand every 10 basis points or whatever, what it means to us in real dollars.
Yep. And I think that data is available, you're asking for. I've read the 19 pages, and frankly, I don't remember what page it was, but I think the difference between, for half a person, was $230,000 in contribution. Bettina?
This year. This
Say that
year.
again?
So that change from year to year depending on where your investments.
But yeah, between 25
180.
basis points here is like 75, 80,000, I think. And I don't have the 6.5 right in front of me, but yeah, there'd be between $100,000 and $200,000 difference between 7 and 6.5.
I'm reading the difference is 180 on page 1 of their memo. 180.
6.5.
180,000 more this year, and that's what I'm proposing. There's another reason to go to 6.5, and that is what our auditors use. As I understand it, there are GASB reasons for doing things differently, auditors versus actuaries in this case, and it's not atypical. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but we right now have one set of estimates as to how much we'll pay done by our auditors and another set of estimates done here. And it strikes me as the opportune time for us to align those if we can.
Well, we prepare the report for the auditors, and so we prepare a discount rate of 6.5. Represents a combination of the presumed rate of return, which in this case was 7%, and the 20-year muni rates, which are much lower, like 3.5%. And under the GASB requirements, the discount rate is determined by projecting all of the benefit payments out as far as they go, and then discounting them back based on whether there are sufficient assets there under the assumed rate, say in this case 7%, to meet the benefit payments. And once the assets, there's no longer assets for that, then it goes into a pay-go assumption. And if all of those benefit payments are discounted back at the muni rate of like 3%, whatever it was. So you get a combined rate. In this case, it's 6.5%. That rate's going to change every year.
I
It
see.
changes because of the muni rates, which go up and down. They went much higher recently. They were, lower a few years ago. So that is
I
not.
see. That's a moving
So
target.
It's a moving target, but it sounds like Lake Forest always budgets 50 basis points lower than us.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
if they're at
it's a-
6.5 today as opposed to 7.
They are. According to the data that Drew sent today, they're at 6.5. They only, and they're looking to be 100% funded by 2040.
Okay. And Drew, in the event that 5 years from now, we do move this down to 6.5, we're adding $200,000 a year, and we are straight lining towards 95% or better, whoever is the board at that time, 5 years from now, could make the decision to change that rate to be less conservative should capital needs arise.
And yes, and that board is actually the police pension fund board, right? Ultimately, this body determines how much it's going to pay into the police pension fund, regardless of what the assumptions are, which are determined by the police pension board. But it's, at the end of the day, we all have to work together to work on this issue.
But this board, 5 years from now, could decide to be less conservative because capital needs are
There
pressing.
could be, correct.
So I
Yes.
hear on the board, trustee Rappin and trustee Ryder are willing to be more aggressive or more conservative with a lower.
I think we owe it to the next generation.
So I would like to hear from other trustees on the board. Trustee Hatch.
If I may just point out one thing, so the city of Lake Forest has been trying to consciously work towards kind of what I think trustee Ryder's talking about, and is that is a higher investment, a regular recurring investment of about a 10-year window to try to kind of, 15-year, sorry, to try to get a bump, and it's more, but it smooths out that, so the payment doesn't increase so rapidly on such a steep slope.
So they've been working towards that 15-year
But they haven't
open
gotten there.
rolling period. They haven't gotten there yet, and
Yeah.
part of their first step to increment into a change was to reduce their rate of return. You also have to factor in, they have multiple pension funds, so there's a lot of cash going on, to fund the various between fire and police.
Right.
So that's their first step. They
But the
haven't-
idea is that they've been talking about it for, what, 5 years? Yeah, so, but it's a process that we're going to make steps towards, so maybe given 6:30, maybe the timing issue is, for today anyway, is that if there's an idea to maybe the finance committee should work with the police pension fund to work towards a plan to implement that higher level investment.
There is, the 15-year funding is of the amortization, of the unfunded, I'm sorry, is helpful, but we'll soon be, we're at 17 years now to get to 2040.
So you're almost there.
So.
But that could change too.
You're almost there.
So-
You're at the
Well,
15-year
it-
mark to be in that window.
So what I
So then-
hear is we are willing to be more aggressive to go and fund and reach mandate in the time. I would like to hear trustee Hatch, trustee Fisher, and trustee Cole for what your impression is.
I think Drew answered my question about how Lake Forest was able to do it, and it sounds like they're planning on or have done a reoccurring additional contribution that's going to make up for any projected losses in the future to try to prevent the pitfalls that trustee Ryder's talking about, and that makes sense to me. Drew, were you saying that the assumptions, we don't make a decision on those assumptions anyway?
The police pension,
They'll
that's
do it.
correct, they do that. But the village board and the police pension fund board have worked together very well over the years, and they would, I don't think they have any opposition to further funding of the police pension
Yeah,
fund.
they're not going to
No,
complain
they're
about
not
further
turning away
funding.
money. Right, yeah.
They're at 6.8 right now, we're
Yeah.
suggesting 6.5,
Yeah.
so it's greater contribution.
I'm not going to add much more because I already, last week, our last session, expressed my interest in not kicking the can, I think that's almost a theme that this organized board has taken on with various issues that we have inherited, so I am interested in making sure that we are fiscally responsible, potentially conservative, in order to not pass the buck. So I'm not going to say much more. I've already expressed that. I've been listening and learning, and sometimes it's smart to just sit back and listen, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think it's been pretty well discussed, and I'm in agreement with trustee Fisher.
Thank you very much. So we basically have a consensus to be more aggressive toward meeting a goal, being more conservative in terms of rate, that would not be a 6.8, but more 6.5, for example, as a mandate from our board here. So thank you.
Thank you.
When would you want to make that effective? Because,
I think the
When's the
mandate
next meeting
was,
of the Police Pension Fund Board? You know?
the point was to have the board and the police pension board working with you and making that effective or making that a priority for discussion.
It's in January, but the issue at hand to change the first year would be tied to this levy that we have on the agenda tonight. So, I mean, we're in the second reading.
It could be,
of
but
that.
the additional funding could come
You
from.
could make up the additional funding on your own without it being tied to a percentage. You know, you could say, okay, the difference is 180,000, we're going to commit that this year without having the rate be changed, and then work on next year's or whatever the policy decisions are.
Recording in progress.
It won't change the levy, that's what we talked about.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
but you could make that contribution choice, you know, you could direct us to do that now. Or as we start the budget year, you know.
It's a
So as to
decision.
not lose another year.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I mean, do you want to try to do that now, or would you rather see it part of a holistic plan, or would you?
I'd like to see the numbers not as they're described in paragraph or exhibit 13, 14, and 15, where the thing that's moving is the rate of return. I'd like to see the numbers comparing what it looks like in the out years if we presume 6.5, 6.8, or 7, an exhibit that's not in this package.
Right.
But I think we should move to 6.5. I think we're a small group, and we have a much wider standard deviation, much wider margin of error that we need to protect against if we're going to budget conservatively.
When's the fiscal year start here? Remind me.
May 1?
May 1. So could we make it effective May 1 without a catch-up and just going forward?
I was thinking that it didn't matter when, I would think it wouldn't matter when the influx of monies happen, right?
Not
Shouldn't.
technically, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you'd hope you'd catch the best
So I think we can
opportunity
meet the
moment to do
demand
it.
for information to see that, and
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine. I think the direction is clear, it's just a matter of, and we'll bring it back to the board, in the form, would probably be a fund transfer.
Yes,
Yeah, so you will get to
A
change.
fund transfer, and we don't have to wait till next year.
no,
I think-
you can do that at will.
Yeah. You can do it before May, you can,
we can prepare the 95% 2040 contribution at 6.5% as if it were done, you know, from May 1. And that could be the guidepost for you to make an additional contribution for 2023. Would that be helpful?
and you can do that, I mean, we can do that the first meeting in January, yes? There's no timing issue about when those monies get deposited into the police pension fund.
No. So I could just attach
yeah.
that schedule to the transfer, and then that would be
Yeah.
the decision or the vote.
Bring it back to the first meeting in January.
Sounds good.
Sounds great, thank you. And that would
Is that okay, trustee Ryder?
Yes, I would like, you know, passbook savings is 5% right now, let's get it in there.
Did you want to talk about open and close before we open? No, okay. All right. Great.
All right, thank you. So I guess we're done with this item. Let's move on to the second item.
Okay.
And that would be.
Flock.
The flock.
Yeah. So this item is also follow-up from earlier this year conversations with the board, and there were a handful of issues that were outstanding when the board last discussed this back in May, and one of which had to do with terms of the agreement for services and equipment with Flock, and I think enough time has passed, and Flock has a very large clientele base, and basically the agreement that we provided you all is the agreement that they would, be willing to enter into the village, but that's probably as good as terms that we're going to get. I should say those are as good as terms that we're going to get.
Are we talking about, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
are you talking about financially as good as we get, or are we talking about the questions that we raised?
All the above.
So no modification or clarification to,
Correct. The agreement that's here, this agreement was most recently negotiated with the Village of Lincolnwood. Our village council here also is village attorney there, and those were the terms that they were willing to agree to, and I think they've gotten less flexible over time. It's probably the best way to describe it, because they don't have to be.
right?
So, but I think that importantly, the clarity that this agreement offers is that when does the information belong to the village and when does it belong to Flock? And it has to come into our control and we have to download it, become village information. So,
Kind of.
well, that's my understanding.
Right.
So-
But well, all right.
How long is the contract?
Yeah.
This is I believe it's a 2-year term. And so that was one issue, and then there was some general privacy concerns, and then there was a question, a technical concern about is there adequate solar available to run it at all the recommended locations? The answer was yes. So I think tonight's conversation, 24 minutes. If there's any more questions or concerns, we try to work through them and decide if this is something you want to budget. This doesn't have to be decided tonight, although it'd be helpful as we're entering into the budget season and trying to plan. It'd be nice to make some general progress in regards to this is something, a technology the village wants to take on.
And just verification, tonight we have Dan Murdock from Flock with us.
Hello.
To help answer hopefully some of those technical questions or other questions you may have. So
Yes. So the last time we got stuck on a conversation, might as well go straight into it. I read through the documents that was provided to us. So retention is 30 days for information. So who owns that information? And I know that Matt can actually ask for some of that information for law enforcement. What else can happen to that information? And how can somebody get to it? And I think another sticking item to it was, yes, we take pictures of cameras, but really there's a lot more to that picture than a license plate, a license plate. So what do you guys keep? How can somebody access it legally? And how can somebody force their way into getting that recording from you?
Yeah, so there were a lot of questions in there. I'll try to knock them all out. So first of all, Flock takes the idea of data privacy very seriously. And one of those items is that there's 30-day retention. So when a capture is made, that is retained on the system for 30 days. Mm-hmm. During those 30 days, departments that Lake Bluff and the council decides that you are sharing your data with can view that. But after 30 days, if that item has not been saved out as part of an active investigation, it is purged and it is gone. So like the FBI, no one can come back to Flock and be like, hey, we need this for a subpoena from 45 days ago. That is bleached, it is gone. So, and that 30 days recommendation is in line with the recommendation from the Illinois Secretary of State as well. As far as length of data, 30 days, your law enforcement, if there's something that's involved in an active case, they can download that image down with all the metadata and then save it on your guys's, do you guys use evidence.com? In evidence.com, and then it goes into whatever retention period you guys have, and that kind of goes off Flock's plate. Now, as far as who owns the data, so whoever has purchased the cameras, they own the data, and part of what you're paying Flock for is Flock will store that data for 30 days for you. Mm-hmm. So you are storing it on CJIS certified Amazon web servers that are heavily encrypted, dual redundancies on different sides of the country. But the Village of Lake Bluff will own the data for the 7 cameras I believe that you guys are putting in place. So your team or your police department, your village decides who else you can share that data with. So a lot of departments share universally. Any law enforcement agency that wants access to it, they get access to it. Some departments, like Joliet has like a 50-mile rule. So only departments in 50 miles. A lot of them have within the state of Illinois. There's a new law that's going to affect in the first of the year called HB 3833, which limits the sharing to any agency outside of Illinois that has not agreed to not use license plate reading data or only use or they are not allowed to use license plate data for immigration or women's reproductive rights. Flock has built that safeguard into our system so that only agencies that have specifically signed an agreement with Flock that they will not use that for data would even be available to view that data. And it's less than, I don't know, like 80 departments outside the state at this point. So we are in line with all those new rules going into place. I guess
There was one more question that was, if we get a picture of a license plate, actually that picture has a much larger picture of the back of a car, including the possibility of a person. Did you work out that issue?
So the image is going to take, basically, I can share up on here if you want to see what an image capture looks like. But there is we do not digitally alter or touch the images in any way. So we are not, so like if this gets submitted for a trial or something like that, that image coming out Flock has never been altered in any way. So we do not, whether it is our live video product or your LPR product that we're talking about, we do not touch anything to do with that image.
You're just signed to the Zoom meeting, Matt. Yeah.
Oh, great. I just gotta share. Oh, there we go. So when your team logs in, this is basically what they're going to be looking at. So it's not very complicated. It's kind of like a Redfin or a Zillow search, where they're picking which cameras they want to view, what they want to search for, and what time they want to search for. So I'm just going to pull every vehicle. Oops, sorry, I got my Zoom thing up. I'm going to pull every vehicle that's gone across these cameras in the last couple hours. So it's about 6,700 vehicles. And you can scroll down and view the different captures here, but this is like the image quality that we're talking about here. So again, rear of the vehicle here. And it will give you, this is a silver gray Nissan sedan. Now, you can come down here and see all the information, but what type of vehicle you want me to look for?
White pickup truck.
Okay, so I'll come in here, I'll grab all of the pickup trucks, all the white ones, and a lot of times silver kind of looks like white, so you can do multiple searches in here without like having to reset the whole thing. And then let's just say you were looking for an F-150. Come in here, run the search, and we'll grab all the white Ford trucks that went up here in the last. So for your law enforcement to be able to take a description from a witness or a Ring doorbell or whatever, put it in the system and search to find where that vehicle is. Now, if other departments are also sharing with them, they're able to track it wider. So I'm sure you can think of several high-profile cases where departments were able to limit down what vehicle they were being searched for and be able to use this to quickly deploy their resources appropriately. So that's post-investigation. And then the real-time aspect is we're directly integrated with LEADS, which is the Illinois State's database for stolen vehicles, warrants, things like that. NCIC, which is the FBI's database for it. Amber alerts, silver alerts, you can create your own custom hot lists so that your team will be alerted in real time when bad actors are entering your area. So the latency is 8 to 12 seconds. So we can either have this pushed as a text message, an email, we can put it right in the squad cars or sent to dispatch. So you can have Officer Martinez writing a report at Village Hall, stolen vehicle comes through, there'll be a little buzzing on his MDT, you'll get a picture of the plate, picture of the vehicle, location, direction of travel, and why I pinged off the hot list. So in near real time, your team can attempt to respond and drive that vehicle out of town. I guess you guys don't have a chase policy? No chase policy?
Depending circumstances.
Okay. Yep. Well, basically, flip the lights, make sure that car doesn't cause any more havoc in the town.
So do you know what I was wondering, like the iPass, right? Mine tracks everywhere that I go. My iPhone kind of tracks everywhere I go.
Yep.
Are there other systems that are, I know we're concerned about privacy here, but those seem to be doing it anyways. Do you have any insight about that? About the ability for a subpoena or a FOIA or whatever with the state of Illinois for iPass or Apple for iPhones? Is it any different here?
So with like iPass, those things are tied directly to credit cards, things like that. There's a lot more personal information involved in this.
Yeah.
A big aspect of Flock is that we are not pulling any PII data here. We are not saying that this is, when I did the search, that vehicle was Erica George. We are saying that is a black SUV with plate XR437. Law enforcement already has the tools to go say who owns that vehicle, but Flock is not databasing that, and we are not connecting it back to any person. So this is a very siloed system that doesn't database individuals.
So I appreciate Trustee Rappin, what you're trying to do here, but the things you just mentioned are things we choose to have in our car. We make a choice and knowingly.
Location services on or off.
Yes, we know. This is a little different. You know, I had a lot of questions about what Flock is using the aggregated data for. So that's something I'd love to hear more about. In this contract, that was my primary concern, aside from privacy issues generally.
Yeah, so part of the contract is that you own the data, not Flock. So Flock is not able to aggregate and resell this in any way. So there are other license plate reading companies that basically sell you the camera, but they own the data and like repackage it to like insurance companies and analytics companies, things like that. With Flock, you own the data, and it specifically says Flock cannot sell it, and in the contract it also says you cannot resell it.
Okay, I appreciate that, but that's not what paragraph 4.5 says. It says that Flock has the right to collect and analyze and use the data that's collected for a number of different reasons. So that's what I'm interested, regardless of how Flock states that it assures anonymity. I'd like to know more details about that.
So we're using, we are randomly selecting images from our cameras across the country to do upgrades on the software for our engineers to work on the pieces of data or on the direct images. It is not associated back to any individual, or it's not picked this camera is being constantly used. They're basically being picked at random. I mean, we just have to be able to use the cameras to upgrade and work on the functionality and all those aspects of it. That is what that is kind of referring to.
It does go a little further, though. It does say that we, the agency, would be granting Flock a non-exclusive worldwide perpetual royalty-free right to use and distribute the data. So it doesn't just say for what you said. It says it's rather vague, frankly, the language. It says for other development, diagnostic and corrective purposes, other Flock offerings, and crime prevention efforts. So that, I hear what you're saying, but that's not what this paragraph says. So I'd like to have more information about what those vague, very broad.
Yeah.
It sounds like Flock is actually not allowed to use the data except when it is, and that's very broad categories of how it's allowed to use the data. And when you say it's randomly taking pictures, and those pictures aren't anonymous. We're looking at images right now that we're all in agreement with, that cars can have bumper stickers, can have specific details besides just the fact that a license plate identifies you. It's tied to a person. So I'd like to hear more about that. Yeah.
So the Supreme Court has said that if you are in a public right-of-way, you do not have the assumption of privacy. And at the end of the day, that is basically what governs the ability for law enforcement to take pictures, or your Shell station to have a camera that captures the right-of-way. So I think a lot of it kind of boils down to that piece of what our court system says. I did want to circle back to a little bit more of that wording that you just described. When we were also talking about like the departments that you guys are allowing to share your data with, Flock is basically the pipes of that. Like whoever you want to share with, you can basically feed your data into that system, whether it's going to just Libertyville and North Chicago, maybe 3 or other departments around you, or everyone in the state. So when I think that is also kind of covering the ability for Flock to help those other departments get the information that would be relevant to their cases. I'm happy to bring back that specific 4.5 and have our legal team kind of word by word by word say exactly what this means. But that has been the interpretation or the gist of how they described it when I've talked to them in the past. But if you need a more specific part of it, I'm very happy to do that.
You know what? I'm reading that paragraph, and you know what? I've run a business where we had that kind of paragraph to be able to make sure that this is your data, but guess what? We need to work on the data to be able to improve our system and being very ethical and being very truthful about it. But I think this paragraph wants to say that, but it also says, and by the way, we can give it to anybody else we want. And so I think that Trustee Fisher is right. I mean, we want to work with you, and we think this is necessary. I think so anyways. But that paragraph is not cool. And so there probably are a few words in there that could be stricken off.
Yeah. Like I said, Flock's business model does not involve in any way taking the data that we are collecting and repackaging it for monetary purposes. That is one of the bedrock parts of Flock, is that Flock does not do that, never has any plans of doing that. I don't know if there's specific wording around why they wrote that, about how we have to share between departments, stuff like that. I'm kind of hearing that in those words. But like I said, I'm more than happy to bring that back to section 4.5? 4.3. 4.3?
No,
Oh,
4.5.
4.5.
Is 4.5?
It might be 4.3 as well, but yeah.
4.3.
It's the aggregated data is 4.5.
Yeah, that's the one that I focused on previously.
Yeah, I can have someone from our legal team, like, kind of word by word explain exactly what that means and how we interpret it for you.
That would be good. Thank you. Are there actually, I believe that Peter, you have a question.
I said a question. When the department pulls or asks you to pull one image, do you then delete that image, or does it still stick to the 30 days for that image?
It's still up there, because if you think about, if there is a crime that this vehicle was involved in, a lot of criminals are committing crimes in multiple jurisdictions. So more than one department is going to want information about that vehicle. So it is up there for 30 days, and then when it's pulled down, anyone can download that into their system.
Within the 30 days?
Yep, who has access to that.
Are you aware if Flock, can, whether it's 4.3 or 4.5, in any circumstances ever changed those legal descriptions or is willing to?
Our legal department has evolved a lot over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Decisions that might have been made 3 years ago would not be made by the current kind of group that's there right now. So
Okay.
I don't have the authority to commit to anything
No.
on that side. Yeah, I do know. And we've worked pretty extensively with your guys' legal firm. A lot of the North Shore communities are using this.
Yeah.
So I know they are asking us to honor things that we agreed to on other contracts in the past. And I believe we did that for Lincoln Wood, and I believe we are currently doing that for Northbrook. So I think anything that's in any of those fairly recent contracts, I know that we are going outside of what we would do if, like, Kankakee called us up to theirs.
Okay, well, that leaves a sliver of light to, we ought to try and do it. And then if the answer is no, then we decide one way or another. But I think pursuing it is I support that.
Are there any other questions from the board? Well, thank you for being here and answering our questions. Are pretty direct questions, so thank you very much.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
I believe that there will be a lot more discussion, so thank you very much. And that gives us to the conclusion of Committee of the Whole. And our last item is the adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much, and we're adjourned. And we're reconvening at
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is a proclamation declaring December 2023 as the National Drunk and Drugged Driving Prevention Month. Whereas every year, thousands of lives are needlessly lost on our nation's roadways because of alcohol and drug-impaired driving. And whereas alcohol, illicit drugs, and even over-the-counter and prescription medications can impair a driver's judgment, decrease motor coordination, and slow the reaction time necessary to safely operate a motor vehicle. And whereas, on December 5, 2023, the Illinois Department of Transportation fatal crash data reported there were 1,080 fatal crashes, of which hundreds of those deaths involved a driver impaired by alcohol and/or drugs. And whereas the December holiday season is one of the deadliest times of the year for impaired driving and for thousands of families across the state and the nation, holidays are a time to remember loved, lost ones. And whereas organizations across the state and the nations are engaged in the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over enforcement effort and other campaigns that foster public awareness of the dangers of impaired driving and anti-impaired driving law enforcement efforts. And whereas the Village of Lake Bluff is proud to partner with the Illinois Department of Transportation's Division of Traffic Safety and other traffic safety groups in that effort to make our roads and streets safer. Now therefore, I, Régis Charlot, Village President of the Village of Lake Bluff, Illinois, do hereby proclaim the month of December 2023 as Drunk and Drugged Driving Prevention Month in the Village of Lake Bluff and call upon all public and private institutions to promote awareness of the impaired driving problem, to support programs and policies to reduce the incidence of impaired driving, and to promote safer and healthier behaviors regarding the use of alcohol and other drugs this holiday season and through the year. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the November 27, 2023 regular Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve a Village Board November 2027 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Thank you. Are there any changes? And I do not see any, so it is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Next would be our non-agenda items and visitors. The Village President and Board of Trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Village Board of Trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Village Board of Trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. And I do not see anybody willing to address the board here. Mr. Irvin?
There's 2 people participating online. If there is someone willing to be heard on items not on tonight's agenda, please raise your hand. You'll be recognized. No one.
Thank you. And moving forward, the Village Board sets the order of a meeting. The Village Board of Trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during this Village Board meeting. And I do understand we have item 20 regarding the LBYC license and item 8A That would be our village administrator's report. Are there any other items that would be addressed first? Without objections from the board,
I thought we are here to address the very last issue on the agenda.
that's item 20.
You are going to do that for,
Yes, item 20, that would be LBYC.
Yep.
Item 8A, that would be the TESCA item. You're welcome. Without any objections from the board, moving on to item 20. Item 20 is a resolution approving a license agreement for the use of village property located at Sunrise Beach by the Lake Bluff Yacht Club for a replacement of a sailing compound. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Over the past several months, the village has been in discussions with the Lake Bluff Yacht Club LBYC leadership in development of a license agreement that would allow the club to rebuild their compound after the NSWRD subterranean overflow storage tank construction is complete at Sunrise Beach. Founded in 1961 by Lake Bluff residents, the original LBYC compound was established in 1963. Today, the club is comprised of over 150 families with a facility that has historically offered 152 compound storage spaces for 180 plus crafts, including sunfish, kayak, and paddle boards. The proposed license agreement provides LBYC the privilege to build and operate a new compound to store boats, watercrafts, and other equipment for their sailing programs, social activities, races, and community involvement opportunities. Noteworthy terms of a proposed agreement include the following. 1, a grant of license, as a non-exclusive revocable license for watercraft storage and club activity. Number 2, a term of license of 20 years. Number 3, a license fee of $3,000 per year. And number 4, a termination protocols. That would be in addition to a village or an SWRD business need, a termination of a license is possible for failure to comply with terms, dangerous conditions, and convenience, but only after the first 10 initial years. As a follow-up to the November 27, 2023 COW meeting, where a consensus was reached as to the location of a new sailing compound, LBYC leadership confirmed that they will be seeking approval from their membership to amend their bylaws to incorporate the following Lake Bluff preference. And I quote, LBYC requires 15% of boat storage for operational needs and will provide LBYC members in good standing who reside or own property in the village of Lake Bluff preference for any and all boat storage opportunities not utilized for operational needs. Should there be storage opportunities greater than LBYC members who are Lake Bluff residents demand, then these storage opportunities will be made available to LBYC general members in good standing. And that would conclude that reading. Are there comments on the board?
I'll just say that I appreciate the LBYC has been to several meetings and understand that it's been a lot of work for them, but I appreciate their willingness to listen to the concerns and bring this proposal to their members.
Thank you. Other comment on the board? Are there any comments in the room to LBYC on this license agreement? And if so, please approach the lectern and state your name and address.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Ann Caldwell. I'm a local resident, neighbor, and part of a larger group of people that love our beach and use it almost every day. So because the discussion of the yacht club compound license and subsequent rebuilding design are just beginning, we now have this opportunity to get off to a good start. We support the licensing agreement, and we look forward to seeing the compound rebuilt. The Yacht Club is one of several valuable community building entities in town. So looking forward, we hope to see the Yacht Club compound that meets the needs, a Yacht Club compound that meets the needs of its members, enhances the open beach space and views, and sensitively reflects and blends in with the natural beauty of the setting. So the choice of materials and plantings are all ahead of us at this point, and now is a good time to begin thinking collaboratively, because what gets built there now is going to be there for several generations to come. So a deliberate plan would employ space-efficient designs that keep its presence on our beach circumspect and subtle. Its size and position should seamlessly flow with the shapes and colors of the neighboring bluffs, the prairie plantings, the shelters, repeating the same style, scale, colors, and materials used for the shelters. So as the discussion moves ahead, developing a transparent line of communication between these many constituents will engender trust, goodwill, understanding, and support, because we have the Park District, NSWRD, the village, the Yacht Club members, and the Lake Bluff residents. So a lot of people are going to want to be in on the information and to be able to access it easily. So it's crucial that we get it right, and I'm just really grateful to be here tonight to express our support in the first place, and our excitement to get involved in the project and see that it gets done beautifully in the end. And I thank you all for your hard work and dedication to our village and keeping it beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing I would like to say, given this comment, is I know that the LBYC is a cash-strapped organization, and so in order to achieve the goals you are advocating for, that is commonality to the village, a level of construction, I think there is a need to raise funds for that. And so I believe that I think LBYC would appreciate if more citizens were to join, given the importance of that institution in our village, and help a rebuild that will last generations, that will be more enjoyed by more people, simply enough. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we would all concur with that. Some of you, I'm Vicki Collins, 217 East Scranton. And I think some of you are new to the board since our little group presented almost 2 years ago, just some concerns about the very first plans that came out from the Reclamation District. And kudos to them. I mean, they just took that to heart and worked and came up with just a much better plan that is really going to get rid of an eyesore down there, you know, that emergency generator with the chain link fence and the barbed wire. And then they're going to keep their new construction back further. We were concerned about it protruding way out into the parking lot and blocking the view and of the beach and everything. And so actually, our request tonight is actually very small. We're just concerned because the Water Reclamation District had planned out that pit for, I think, many years ago. I think it was a fairly old design, but it was just rotated a little bit in plan. And, you know, what you saw 2 weeks ago, I think the Yacht Club is kind of following it, rotating it just a little bit in plan. There's really no need for it to do that. And we're just asking that if the Yacht Club could simply stay at the east boundary that it had at one time before it was taken down, it would align then. It would align with the picnic shelter that's to the south, and then the Water Reclamation District buildings to the north. And George and I have looked at the plans. It's just a small rotation. It's doable. So we hope we can achieve that. And then as this design is developed, we just request that everybody remember it will stick out, and the north and south faces will be very visible. So we can't think of only that elevation that faces the lake. It's going to be seen from the beach. It's going to be seen as you approach the beach. And we look forward to seeing what the Yacht Club does. We understand the financial restraints. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mickey.
I am George Russell, resident at 448 Gurney Avenue. I just want to echo what Mickey and Nan have both said. We understand and we support the Yacht Club. We understand their need for space, but we also love that South Beach area and the views afforded by the South Beach area. And it is very important as we move through this location and design phase for the yacht club facilities that we keep both of those goals in mind. As my wife will tell you, I'm a worrywart, and I sometimes focus on details, but sometimes details are very important, and things can blow up on you. So I just want to quickly show you a couple slides, historic slides. This was a picture taken in April 1969 from the old concrete pier that used to run out into the lake and was a big focal point of beach activities. But this is a picture looking northwesterly at what we call the Mountain Avenue Bluff. Right up the center of this photograph is the intersection of Sunrise Avenue and Mountain Avenue. And that's what it looked like in April 1969. And then we'll fast forward 2 years to April 71.
That's an overstatement. Give me a second.
Okay, well, slow forward. Glenn used to do it faster.
Hey, hey.
Blow, blow.
This won't be counted against your time at the podium.
Okay. Hear that sound? Doesn't like what I'm trying to do here. Huh? Try again.
Are we going to move in 2-year increments?
Oh, there were 4 slides. Yeah, we're not going.
That would take a while. Oh, listen, I'm really interested to see this. I really am.
While we're waiting,
There we go.
there we go. Okay, this is literally 2 years
1971.
later. 2 years later of the same area, and in the winter of 71, there was a large storm and lake levels were high, and the storm ate away at the toe of the bluff. And when it ate away at the toe of the bluff, the surface of the bluff above the toe started to slide down. Okay, next slide. That's
How do you happen to have these pictures while he's pulling them?
the Lake Bluff History Museum did an
course.
exhibit on the lake. And I
Nice.
spent all of January and February last year going through and finding about
this.
750 slides of the
Nice.
beach,
I
extending
have
back
pictures.
120 years, and it's, we've got quite a neat record.
I bet.
Ugly.
What?
Oops, actually, we slipped out of order, but this is the late 1970s, so this is literally 10 years after the toe disappeared. And this is what happens when the toe of a bluff disappears and there's nothing to support the soil surface above it. The whole thing starts to work its way downhill. And when it works its way downhill, then when the bluff face is completely exposed, there's horrible erosion. And there's a completely different story to tell that we're not going to tell tonight, because the bluff got much, much worse than this. And then there was a massive project finally in the late 80s for a restoration, but the top of the bluff is 40 to 50 feet back from where it was in 1970. So that's background. I know you're wondering, what does this have to do with the North Shore Water Reclamation District? So then the 5th and 6th slides, Drew, show pictures taken yesterday
Oh,
of the pit down there, where the yacht club
you
is
want looking
going.
north first?
Which, the 5th, the one that was
Yeah. That's the one.
listed in order, actually the west.
73 picture?
No. The last 2 pictures that are listed there. There we go. You can. Okay, actually, this is a picture taken from the south, behind the south shelter. This is looking north towards the existing pump station. It's the westerly limit of that gigantic hole that's been dug down there. And you can see on the backside of the sheet pile, the metal that is there, that the toe of the bluff has been completely excavated away. So, worrying about the details. The The question that I really advocate the village to follow up on with the North Shore Water Reclamation District is specifically, what are their plans for stabilizing the toe of that bluff when the pump station is complete? Because if you just dump soil in there, it will erode in rainstorms, and then the surface of the bluff above that is going to start eroding. And more importantly, and this is a view taken from the rocks on the outside, looking towards the back where you can more effectively see how the toe is gone. And
that's
why
new-
we're
that's
here
new
tonight
this year.
talking about this.
That's new this year?
Yeah, that's all due to the excavation that they did for that, and it is very important that that be stabilized. And why it needs to be stabilized, and we need to understand how they're going to stabilize it, is because the west limit of the yacht club is going to go as far west as we can get it. And if they try extending the toe with more soil than where it was before, it's going to push the east limit of the yacht club compound out into the little beach area we have. I'm hoping, and I don't know if the village knows because the resident engineer didn't know, and I called them several weeks ago for the project and asked, is the sheet pile staying? I'm hoping that it's going to stay because it would provide a terrific stabilization and anchor for the toe of that bluff. And we want it to stay as high as it can stay. And then if it does stay, the fencing for the yacht club could be pushed right against the sheet piling, and that sheet piling is probably 5 to 10 feet west of where the wall of the tank is. So we may actually be able to gain some distance if the sheet pile is staying. So I advocate that the village pursue this issue with the contractor. And a lot of times after the hole is dug and a structure like this is dug and the structure is poured, there's different subcontractors that work on this project. And before all the piping goes in there, this contractor might be leaving. And as soon as that structure gets poured, hopefully in another 2 months, they may come along and cut the top of that sheet piling off. A lot of times they just leave it, but they like to keep it 3 or 4 feet below grade. And we certainly want them to do that out on the beach area. We don't want that steel right below the sand.
Yeah.
But along the west limit, we want that sheet pile to stay as high as it is now, because it would provide a terrific anchor, not only to protect our bluff behind there, but to allow us to get the compound as far back as we can. And every foot is precious. The yacht, I'm sorry, there's no yacht club members here.
There is.
but-
There's one.
There is.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is.
They want every square foot. I understand they need every square foot they can get.
So I hear your comment, and I think this is a really good comment, and I really like where you're going. Every foot counts, and I'm completely aware of that thing. I mean, what you're leaving out of that conversation is the reason why we have these landslides, and I've seen those landslides in the last 2 years, and I've taken pictures of that southward of the compound, for example, this is water level is one thing, but the wave action is the other thing. So that conversation you're having with us, you should also have with the Park District. Because I know that there was a significant effort to consider arming our beach with not jetties, but the T's, whatever you call that, to basically damper wave action, especially. Now, everybody thinks that because the water went down, we won't have that issue again, but it will happen again.
It will happen again, no doubt about it, yeah. So then, one other detail type of thing, like my wife will tell you, that drives me crazy, and that's when we locate the yacht club compound, when they develop their final drawings, they need to do it on engineering survey drawings, not architectural renderings, not aerial photographs, because the material that was submitted to you at your committee of the whole meeting, unfortunately, had several pretty large dimensional errors in it. The conclusion that they reached, and I'll read it to you, on the last page of their packet. Let's see if I can find it now. Here it is. In the Yacht Club summary for the village board, they concluded that the proposed footprint of the compound will only protrude 4 feet further east than the pump house landscaping, when in fact, the footprint's going to protrude 19 feet further east, not 4 feet. And that's, I can show any of you after the meeting, and we're not objecting to that because the existing compound goes out that far now, and that's why it's easy to demonstrate that what they calculated, however it was calculated, was incorrect. So we've got to start with good drawings, and we have good drawings. The North Shore had a surveyor prepare a whole site survey in 2022. That document compares completely with a Park District survey that was done in 2015. So it's not an engineering survey error. It's errors from using architectural renderings or aerial photos where you lay an exhibit over top of a, so the village has got to give the yacht club the right information, and their people need to start with that. Otherwise, all this discussion about serving and saving every 3 or 4 feet is silly. It's really silly. The yacht club stated in their materials that they want a compound that's 75 by 75, but the detailed drawing that was in there showed a dimension for the new compound of 70.5 feet. So my question is, do the yacht club also go back and check that? Was your report just an error, or is the drawing an error? What are you really looking for as your minimum? And then last but not least, there's actually, both surveys that I referenced show that there's 30 feet between, or there was 30 feet between the south fence line of the compound and the north wall of the south shelter. And that's a much greater distance than what has been talked about. And I think because of the critical need for space for the yacht club, that there's an opportunity for maybe another 500 square feet of storage in the far southwest corner of the site. And I'd be happy to send you a sketch, Drew, illustrating, because there were dimensional references once again in their report that were just not correct. So we've got to work with good numbers.
So
But it's all has the potential to be a better result.
So I hear you very well. Thank you, George. And what
Thank
I
you for your
hear
time.
is, so whereas we are all aligned on the need of LBYC to be in this community, so this is a settled matter. In effect, what we're saying is we have actually opportunities to make it better from a precise dimension standpoint, and we have a precise location or basically dimension around that.
Of course, and that's what's going to come out through this final process, going through the Rio plan. And so I think this first conversation was to get the license so that the yacht club felt comfortable to keep drilling down, right? So that's how we got to this point. Agreed, George, in terms of.
Thank you for your details.
One question,
Yeah.
George, about, is the pit parallel to the NSWRD, or is it skewed?
No, the pit is.
It's skewed.
Ms.
It's skewed.
Collins, they skewed the pit also. We're not really sure
Why?
why it was done. They said it had to do with the alignment of the bluff, but we don't know. But the rotation, to us,
Okay.
it doesn't, the loadings of that yacht club structure are so light compared to the
Yes.
enormity of that tank and what that tank will support. We don't understand. I know there's an issue with one access manhole in the far
Yeah.
corner,
Northwest
southwest corner. The
and
northwest ones, the important ones, where the pumps are, that's not really affecting, you can rotate that thing and it's hardly changing anything, but that's the other point. Has a detailed discussion really been had with North Shore to find out how important that one manhole is that is in the southwest corner? If they're only going to access that one every 20 years or so, can a temporary structure that maybe is supporting the paddle boards instead of the bigger boats that could be slid off right away and rotate the thing? And we've got our 4 feet right away that we're trying to save, and then everything will line up perfectly, because the shelter that was built there by the Park District and the wall of the pump station, they both
They're
are
parallel.
aligned to true north and south.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Drew, if I can ask,
Yep.
the license agreement is step one. Step two, the design, that comes back through the ARB, the
PCZBA and to the village board
PCZBA.
for final approval.
Okay. Okay.
Are there any more questions on the board following those remarks?
And we'll come back with clarification, and report back to you all about the comments about George. I think they have to leave those pylons there. I think that's already been determined, so I was surprised you said the RE didn't know that. But, yeah. Anyway, but I think because we've talked about that, so anyway, I'll report back to you all.
Thank you. It is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch. Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving forward to item 8A, I believe. Item 8A is our village administrator's report. Mr. Irvin.
So, back in April, the village engaged Tesca Associates along with Opticos Design, to start updating the village's comprehensive plan, land use plan, which was originally approved back in '97. There's been a handful of amendments over time, but it was time to go back and look at that document that guides land use decisions for the village for the next couple of decades here. And so Tesca and Opticos have been hard at work working with the village's advisory body that's really managing this project, which is the Planning Commission Zoning Board of Appeals. They're the body holding all the hearings related to it and working it through. And we thought we'd bring in Michael Blue and Andrew Dunnell from Tesca and Associates to give everybody an update on where we're at. I know Trustee Rappin had to leave early, but he's been the village's, I'll say liaison from the board level with this project. But I'll turn it over to you, Michael, and we can let you do your presentation. He's got about 10 to 15 minutes worth of material. Actually, it was about 3 hours worth. We could have done that earlier today.
But he's got 15 minutes.
I wanted to do the long version. No, what we'd like to do is take just a little bit of your time and talk to you a little bit of sort of the greatest hits of the existing conditions finding, and we'll talk about how all this fits into everything. But first of all, Mr. Village President, members of the board, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. This is kind of a planned check-in because we're at sort of a milestone in the process of the plan. We'll talk about that in a second. As Drew mentioned, I'm joined by Andrew Dunham from our office. We're working with the good folks at Hay Associates and the folks at Opticos who have been hired alongside this project. So with that, maybe we'll just dive in and I'll get through this in record time. If there's something I don't cover, either stick a pin in it and ask me later, but we can have some discussion after. So with that, Drew, if we can go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit just to ground ourselves on why we're doing this, and then we'll have an overview of the existing conditions, which is really what we've been doing so far. We have been talking to people and assessing what's going on, and we'll walk you through that. We'll talk about the community engagement. Remember, this is a community plan. This is not a technical study. This is a community plan, and so listening to the community is a big part of what we do, and then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So just the next slide's got a little bit of why we do this and what is the purpose of the plan. Again, just to kind of be on the same page. Why does a community update a plan? As Drew said, the last one was adopted in 1997. Boy, it's even hard to say dates that start 19 anymore, isn't it? So that's a while ago. Think of all the things that have changed in the world and in Lake Bluff since then. But we do plans to build on those past actions. There's been a lot that's been done. We don't throw it out and start over. We build on what's been done. We also have a great chance to learn from the community. Before somebody comes for a proposal, before an issue comes up, this is a chance to talk about the future of the village in a way that, well, there's nobody here for a hearing, right? So my favorite part of this as a former community development director is that the plan answers the question, what does the village want to see here? Because that's what happens. Staff gets calls from developers, property owners, says, what do you want to see here? And part of the answer is, what does the plan say? And it's a chance to be proactive and have these discussions that will help you as you get into issues that come up. So the next slide talks a little bit about the team. As Drew mentioned and as I reiterated, this is who's working on the project. I would just add on this slide that part of the team is the village. specifically the staff and the PCZBA that's serving as the steering committee. But this is a team effort, and you are all part of that effort as well. In terms of the schedule, you can see on this slide, and these slides are all available and all on the website for anybody to take a look at. We're just finishing up phase 2, which kind of runs through the whole project, but where you see December 2023, what we've started to do based on the existing conditions is start to develop some goals and objectives, some high-level policy statements of, okay, here's what we've learned, what do we do now? And we'll be talking to the PCZBA, starting that discussion on Thursday. So what have we found? This is a summary of I think almost 100 or so page report that, again, it's on the website and it's been made available. And the thing we like about it is you can either kind of flip through it quickly, or you can spend a long time digging into numbers and so on if that's your jam. But the first thing we always look at is, just in terms of scale, how large is the community? How do we compare to other communities? Almost mostly because people just want to know, quite honestly. But what you see here is that in terms of Lake Bluff, it's comparable to other North Shore communities, and there's nothing on this slide that would be a surprise. The next slide we included, and there's a bunch of slides about demographics, but this one we included because it talks about where workers work and where do people who live in Lake Bluff work and where do people who work in Lake Bluff come from. And the reason I put this slide in is one of the members of the PCZBA, when we said, what of this presentation surprised you? This is one of the few slides that had a surprise. And it's actually a good one because that number over on the right side that talks about 2,000 or so employees is significant, right? Lake Bluff is a bedroom community, absolutely, but there's an employment base here, right? And that points to economic development, that points to potential shoppers, that points to potential visitors. So this was one of the interesting things that we found, wanted to highlight for you tonight. We always look at the market, we always have to understand the reality, and this is, if nothing else, the biggest reason to redo a plan that's 25 years old, because the market is so very different. The first thing as it relates to Lake Bluff is the reality that there are two distinct business districts. Again, a lot of this won't be a surprise, but it's significant for us to keep in mind as we go forward. The Village Center and 176 and Waukegan, Route 41 area, very different areas, very different purposes, but terrific because they have these different purposes in different parts of the town, and each one is appropriately located, which is terrific. It's not always the case, but it's an important finding to build with, and it's part of what has made the village what it is, but it's important to keep in mind as we keep going forward. In terms of land use, what you see here is what you see on some of the other slides is a lot of green. And that's important to the character of Lake Bluff, and that's something that needs to be continued and needs to be observed. Planning colors, right? The yellow is single family, the purple is industrial, the red is commercial. What we look for first, or what I always look for first, is there separation between the two? The other thing we look for is, can you get there from here? Can you get to the parks? Can you get to the business areas? And that's something that we talked about a little bit on some of the later slides, but the thing that's important in terms of transportation are those connections. And there's 3 slides here which each represent those 3 forms of connections, right? The first one is traffic, because people are always going to drive, even in a pedestrian community like Lake Bluff. The second one is the trail network, which is great, and it's got some places where there can be some more additions and connections. But we talk about traffic of cars, we talk about trail networks for people who are biking or walking on the trails, and the third one, it's like we practiced this, Drew. The third one is the sidewalk network, which is very important in a pedestrian community and is something that exists here. And again, one of the things we look at is where are the connections, where can this be added to, where can this be enhanced. Environmental and sustainability are only on a couple of slides here, but I don't want to give the impression that that means that it's not a significant part of the whole plan, right? And so open space is generally where there is no development, where is there permanent open space? And permanent open space is always thought of in terms of acres per thousand of people. It's a rule of thumb, and 10 acres per thousand is one that you see commonly, and that's pretty much what we have in Lake County overall. So what you have is a community with a substantial amount of open space, and that's terrific. There's a lot of other slides, a lot of other information in the full report, but it all talks about, am I going too slow? Sorry.
No, this is awesome.
That speaks to the environment. But the ravines are a unique element of the village, and that's why they're up here and represented. The next couple of slides go back to that 1997 plan, and talk not just about that plan, but talk about some of the amendments that have been made, which are listed on the next slide. The next two slides are included as much as anything for these asterisks that are in here. The reason being is that the village has a history of acting on the plans, right? Plans do not sit on the shelf in Lake Bluff, they get acted on. And that's something that we wanted to point to here in terms of what's been done with the downtown planning principles and some of the other implementation aspects of the plan.
And if I may interrupt and take some more time, but
But
so as a sneak preview to the PCZBA's meeting this week, that a lot of these planning documents, there's a lot of high level, we're calling them fundamental planning goals that are like the DNA of Lake Bluff. What makes Lake Bluff Lake Bluff? And so that's what the PCZBA is going to talk about on Thursday night, and then they're going to drill down and start getting more very specific plans, planning objectives and tactics and strategies to make those happen. And so, like Michael said, there's an immense amount of planning tools that are still of value that need to go back and revisit it and have all that in there, going back to the 97 plan, the CBD plan back from 98 and 2000, and then the Waukegan Road Corridor Plan and the 41-176 Interchange Plan. There's lots of good information and work that's been done in getting all that, harvesting all that, and getting that in front of the PCZBA and go through the public process, say, are these still the right ideas? Is this how we still want to look? And it's a lot of work, but in the end, it gives the village a great blueprint to move forward.
I would like to say that in any one of my meetings with Drew, so that's a couple of times a week at least, we always end up pulling out a plan, a strategic plan, or any of the other plans we have established in the last 20 years, literally.
Yeah.
And so it's a great tool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would add that the plan doesn't start with these details or these action points. The plan starts with a bigger picture in terms of what is important to Lake Bluff, what are the values and characteristics of the community that are going to be advanced in the plan, and then plans progress to higher levels of detail. So we're not here yet, but we're building on what's been done in previous plans, both at the higher level, and we'll look at this.
All the way down to the details of like the Adirondack chairs on the corner and why they should be moved to somewhere else.
Moving on.
we shrunk.
When we talk about community character, it's one of those fuzzy phrases that means something different to everybody, but the plan has a way of kind of conveying it. It tells the story, and when planners and designers we look at these kinds of features about paths and edges and boundaries and how do we connect and how do we get around town. And so this is a graphic that shows some of that framework. The other thing that's part of it that's on the next slide are community facilities. Right? So if you're going to have a community, do you have the elements and the pieces, and are they reachable, and are they connected by paths and trails? And that's why this sort of slide is important to us, and we look at this sort of thing. I want to spend just a couple minutes on public engagement. As I said, this is not a technical study. This is about listening to what folks in the community have to say. That doesn't drive the plan. It's like, oh, people said we need more shopping centers, or people said we need more trees. That doesn't drive the plan. It informs the plan. And so that's what I want to talk about for a minute here. The website, lakebluffplan.org. Please visit if you haven't already. Please subscribe if you haven't already. You'll get pinged when something gets added here. This really becomes the community place of discussion for the plan. And the next slide is probably the most fun example of that, is the comment map. I know Drew checks this every 6 or 8 hours just to see what's new on it. But this is great because this is a way that people specifically point to locations that are interesting or have a concern, and people comment on it. So this really is where a lot of the discussion about the plan takes place, and we hope as many people as possible will be part of it because, like I said, it helps to inform what we talk about. Some of the other bits of engagement, we were at the farmer's market in August. We did a kickoff survey right around that beginning. We had an open house last month, had about 50 people here. And what did we hear? Well, again, it's kind of summarized here, right? The value of open space, the value of the tree canopy, the value of the unique vibe of Lake Bluff was great, and it mostly revolves around the downtown. Walkability, the need for new housing types, housing for seniors and housing for new families, to the extent that can happen, was something that we heard. And I think overarching, this value of a small-town community where you know your neighbors, and you can just get to see people. We've heard from so many people about coming downtown and seeing people you know. So that sticks with us. That becomes driving. The next slides summarize real quickly what is kind of my favorite part of the whole thing, are our key Perone interviews. We interviewed Ava and, sorry, I apologize for the typo. Key person interviews. We talked to about 25 stakeholders in the community, and this is a focus group discussion. And it's a chance to really go into some depth in terms of what's going on. And they echoed some of those things that we heard before. They talked about housing as being a concern. They talked about flooding. They talked about the interchange is a tough way to get around, and the strengths are no surprise to you. The next slide is also interesting because it talks about what are the opportunities, right? And these are not all of them. These are not all the ones we've heard. These are not all the ones that we've identified as a team, but this is just a kind of the range of things that have come from the discussions. What's interesting is some of the challenges are about preserving the character of the community and the larger developments, larger properties that have not yet developed, and the potential that they will someday, and how do we tackle that? So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, Thursday, we'll be talking about these high-level goals, directions for the community, and once the PCCBA is comfortable with that direction, we'll start to drill down and provide more detail on those. But the idea is that after the start of the year is to move on to this other step here that you see for winter about developing plan recommendations. So we're not going to dive right into writing a plan, but we're going to start to identify the things that have come out of all of this existing condition, all the policy discussion. We're going to start Thursday with the Plan Commission, or with the PCZBA, and we'll have some ideas to come back to the community with that for you to deliberate on.
Very good. Thank you.
Nicely
Fascinating.
done. Yes.
Love it.
You all.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
That's my report.
Great job, Drew.
Thank you. Very good at delegation.
Next item would be number 7, the village finance report, and that would be for the warrant report for November 28 to December 11, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the warrants report?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. As a summary of background and reason for request, we have expenditure of village funds for payments of invoices in the amount of $795,200.34 for November 14 to November 27, 2023, and expenditure of village funds for payment of payroll in the amount of $281,109.30 for October 2023, for total expenditures of $1,076,309.64. Comments on the board?
No.
No comments?
No? No comments on the board? And so this is a roll call. Clerk,
Trustee
please call.
Fisher,
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
And Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving forward to our village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you, Peter. followed by my report, and I do not have a report, except that we met for the stormwater.
We met with District 1 officials as well as Senator Morrison last week. And we have been having ongoing check-ins with IDOT with our ongoing encouragement of them to participate financially into the Deep Tunnel project. And I actually think for the first time, we made some, I would call, progress, in that it seems that they've agreed verbally that the Deep Tunnel project is the right solution and best solution for them as well. That they, we've been going back and forth about where does their responsibility begin and end. They have initially taken the position that their responsibility begins and ends with the right-of-way where it ends today, which is so the pipe that goes all the way down to the ravine. We've been going back and forth over that, but with the help of Senator Morrison, I think they have begun to see the light and are certainly indicating a much stronger participation level, anywhere from 4.5 to 7. We're getting closer to where we wanted them to be and where we feel it's appropriate, given their asset needs help, and what we're offering them is a much more economical solution. So, progress.
It is on two different fronts, ownership, where they actually admit that because there is no record, this predates IDOT, so they say, oh, this is not ours. And the second thing is, so ownership first, and as you say, right away, and the possibility that they will come to the table giving us, we hope, $6.5, $7, $8 million to continue our project. So it's a good thing. It's pulling teeth, but it's moving forward.
And part of that, their conversation is they did an initial review. They have not, just procedurally, we started down this path with the phase 1 of the entire project, knowing that we didn't really have a good understanding where we would get funding from, and needed to have the full reviews and complete all those procedures so that we can not shut a door unnecessarily. And so that work is now coming to completion, and IDOT's getting a preliminary look, and part of that review internally resulted in them actually adding, help me out here, Jeff, is like another $1.2 million worth of work, which really what it does is it takes the existing outfall and pipe out of the picture. They just want to be done with that, as we had left it just as a cost-saving measure, leave it in place. And they're willing to at least spend more to get rid of it forever and ever to eliminate that. So that's where the conversation's headed, and so we'll keep you in the loop on that. But it was, again, the first light of hope.
So I'm happy about that. We are moving forward. And again, Senator Morrison is really helping us.
Yep.
She has really embraced this project. That is one of our 2 projects, she says, the other one being 41-176, the interchange. So I am grateful to her for helping us in this matter. Thank you. Next would be the acceptance of a correspondence. Please note that all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational report on November 22nd and December 1st, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the correspondence?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion carries. Thank you. Next would be item 12. And that would be a second reading of an ordinance levying property taxes for fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2023, and ending April 30, 2024, for the Village of Lake Bluff, Lake County, Illinois. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Pursuant to state law, on or before the last Tuesday in December, the village must file with the county clerk an ordinance requesting a property tax to be levied on all taxable property within the village. After review of levy estimates and financial projections at their October 9th meeting, the Finance Committee unanimously recommended approval of an aggregate property tax levy of $5,043,168. The village share of a property tax levy is $3,904,587. It is anticipated that the Lake Bluff Public Library Board will request a property tax levy of $1,138,581 for the year 2023. The total levy amount of $5,043,168 is in compliance with the Property Tax Limitation Act and the Truth in Taxation Act special notice. And the Truth in Taxation Act special notice was not triggered by this levy. I'm sorry about that. The village board approved first reading of a levy at its November 27th meeting. Questions on the board to Bettina? It is a roll call.
Well, there
Oh,
is somebody
I'm
still
sorry.
online, yeah. If there's somebody online that wishes to make a comment about this item, please raise your hand, you'll be recognized. No, and there's no one here but staff. So,
Okay.
roll call, he said.
And so it is a roll call.
Trustee Ryder,
Aye.
trustee Cole,
Aye.
trustee Fisher,
Aye.
and trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 13, next item is a second reading of an ordinance abating 2023 property taxes levied for general obligation debt series 2019 and 2019A bonds of the Village of Lake Bluff, Lake County, Illinois. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The village currently has refunding bonds, Series 2019 and 2019A, general obligation bonds outstanding. Pursuant to ordinances 2019-18 and 2019-26, the county clerk is required to extend a property tax levy in an amount sufficient to pay the interest and principal on the bonds. Fortunately, the Waterworks Fund has adequate funds to transfer to the Waterworks bonds and interest account for principal and interest payments on the 2019 general obligation bond and the 2019A refunding bonds, which allows the village to abate the annual property tax levy. Because the bond ordinances directing extension of the annual property tax levy were filed with the county clerk, an ordinance is required to abate, not levy, the property tax for these bonds. The village board approved first reading of the ordinance at its November 27th meeting. Any comments on the board? Any comments online?
Doesn't appear so.
Fascinating subject. Any comments from you, Bettina? And it would be a roll call.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving forward, thank you, Bettina. Moving forward to an ordinance amending the second year of the biennial budget of the Village of Lake Bluff for a fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30, 2024. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. To align expenses with amounts noted in the first year of a multi-year budget, staff recommends, following past practice, to revise the second year of a fiscal year 2023 to 2024 biennial budget in the amount of $948,465.40 for expenditure rollovers, adjustments, and additions. This includes the following. Number one, fiscal year 2024 costs associated with the purchase of the Altex aerial forestry truck. And this is for Resolution 2023-06. Number two, the waiver of competitive bids for the purchase of 2 replacement police vehicles. And this is Resolution 2023-43. Number three, the replacement of a village hall second floor HVAC system. Number four, fiscal year 2024 West Scranton Viaduct Drainage Improvements for Resolution 2023-43. Number 5, fiscal year 2024 Spring Sidewalk Replacement. Number 6, Scranton Avenue paving improvements as for Resolution 2021-44. Number 7, increasing the general fund transfer to the VERF for police squad car replacement. Number 8, increasing the general fund transfer to the capital fund for future capital projects. Number 9, increasing the general fund transfers to the social security fund to provide a small reserve. And number 10, last, adding the current fiscal year 2024 revenues and expenditures associated with the stormwater utility fund. These fund transfers are recommended to strengthen reserves in the respective funds. We anticipate one more amendment at the end of this fiscal year, and funds are available to effectuate these expense modifications from source other than the tax levy. Any comments from the board? Any questions to Bettina? Do we have anybody online willing to make a comment?
Doesn't appear so.
And so, moving forward with a voice vote this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And so this motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item is, thank you, Bettina. Next item is item 15, an ordinance adopting the Village of Lake Bluff current paid leave and benefits policy and opting out of the Illinois Paid Leave for All Workers Act, 820 ILCS 192/1 and subsequent for all Village of Lake Bluff employees. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. The Paid Leave for All Workers Act requires Illinois municipalities to provide 40 hours of annual paid leave to full-time employees beginning in 2024 for leave, as for leave is prorated for part-time and seasonal employees. Current collective bargaining agreements are unaffected by the Act until their expiration. Paid leave accrued may be taken for any reason without documentation, but employers may set leave policies that require employees to provide notice of 7 days for foreseeable leave and as soon as possible for unforeseeable leave. The village recognizes the importance of paid leave and already provide benefits, including paid leave that are more generous than those required under the Act. Therefore, the village would like to exercise its home rule authority to maintain current employee leave benefits. The Act would significantly modify the scope of benefit provided, namely, the circumstances under which paid leave benefits can be used. The village has determined that applying the Act to village employees on January 1st, 2024 will negatively impact governmental operations and place an undue burden on the village's ability to provide uninterrupted services to the residents of Lake Bluff. The proposed opt-out is consistent with other municipalities through the region. As the attached ordinance must be passed before the start of a new calendar year, it is requested that first reading is waived and second reading is granted at this meeting. Does that mean that we need to do
No, you just need to approve it first. You do a voice vote on the first, and then.
And you do
next
right
person-
away a roll call?
Motion to waive second reading, yeah.
Got it. Are there any questions on the board on this decision?
No.
Okay. And so it is first a voice vote?
Yes, sir.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And anyone opposed? So the motion carries. And so could I please have a motion to
I'll make
Waive
the
second
motion.
reading. Waive second reading.
Yeah.
waive second reading?
Motion to waive second reading. Second.
All in favors?
Voice,
Aye.
I mean, roll call vote.
Roll call.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Does the village president need to vote on it?
Yes.
Village President
Yes.
Charlo. Thank you.
And the motion carries for the village, so thank you very much. Item 16 would be an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff Municipal Code regarding the adoption of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and updating references to adopted building codes. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. The state of Illinois has recently adopted its 2021 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code with amendments effective January 1st, 2024. Adopting the attached ordinance will keep the village code consistent with the state requirements. In some cases, the Illinois amendments maintain existing requirements in situations where the 2021 IECC would otherwise become more stringent, most notably in the ceiling installation requirements, where the Illinois amendments maintain the existing R49 requirements despite the IECC changing to R60s. Additionally, staff has identified 4 instances where references to 2015 code editions were not updated in our previous code amendments earlier this year. The ordinance corrects those references. The Architecture Board of Review considered the draft ordinance at their December 5th meeting and voted 4-0 to recommend adoption of the draft ordinance. Any comments from trustees? Thank you. It is a roll call. Actually, it is a, do we do also a double vote?
Same process. Again, this is something that to be in place for effective January 1. So
Okay.
voice vote, first reading.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And could I please have a motion to waive second reading?
Motion to waive second reading.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And it is a roll call. Okay.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
President Charlo.
Yes. Next item would be item 17, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois State Controller regarding the local debt recovery program. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The State of Illinois Office of the Controller operates the Local Debt Recovery Program, which provides local governments the opportunity to collect outstanding debts from proceeds the state would otherwise pay to individuals, such as income tax refund or lottery winning. Outstanding amounts are deducted and deposited in the Controller's local debt winnings recovery fund trust, after which there is a 60-day appeal period before the amounts are transferred to the village account. There is no cost for this program, as the state assesses an administrative fee to the debtor in addition to the amount owed. Staff recommends approving an intergovernmental agreement with the state for the collection of outstanding parking tickets, utility bills, and any other delinquencies. Any comments? Any questions to Drew and Bettina?
Bettina had used this in other communities she had worked in from time to time. It's not the end all, but it's just another tool.
Right.
I mean, what is the extent of that program? How much amount could we expect?
So it's kind of seasonal because it's going to ebb and flow with the tax season. So at one point in the year, you might get a good chunk of money if you've uploaded debts into it, and then it could take a while before you see anything again.
So the next time there is a lottery of winning of about $10 billion, can we pay for a viaduct with it?
Doubtful. I don't think anybody's that indebted to the village. So.
But it's just a way to assume collections without enlisting a collection agency or without it costing us any money. It's free.
Which the village's practice has not done,
No, we have not done it in the past.
which is a little bit unusual, but kind of like Bluffy. So, yeah.
Cool.
And I guess it was probably 10 years ago, the village did an amnesty period for those who had outstanding parking tickets, and the universe of unpaid fines was around 20K. Is that about right?
A little higher, actually.
Yeah. Didn't have a lot of takers, so. Anyway.
If there are no questions, this is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 18 would be a resolution authorizing the waiver of competitive bids for the purchase of one replacement vehicle. Is there a resolution to approve this, a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. On October 28, 2023, 2 police department vehicles were damaged in an accident that occurred during a special enforcement detail when a driver on Illinois Route 41 fell asleep and drifted off the road. The village staff contacted the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency to determine the level of damage done to the police vehicles, and based on their assessment, one of the police vehicles was determined to be a total loss requiring replacement. And we're grateful that no police officer was hurt in this matter.
Absolutely.
Despite the extremely limited stock of police vehicles on the market and no state contract for police vehicles this year, village staff was able to locate a vendor, Morrow Brothers Ford of Greenfield, Illinois, with an available 2023 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor at a cost of $42,170. Fortunately, RMA will reimburse the village at the cost of the original totaled 2022 vehicle purchase price that was, at that time, $37,565. And the village will be responsible for the difference of $4,600 to complete the purchase. The upfitting and marking of a patrol vehicle will also be covered by IRMA. While this cost exceeds the current budget amount, sufficient funds are available in the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund to cover the small overage. While multiple quotes were solicited for replacement, village staff was not able to locate an available vehicle at a lower price. Given the need to immediately replace the vehicle, it is necessary to waive the village formal competitive bidding requirements to authorize the purchase. And so I would have a question for that. I know that you're also looking to replace other vehicles. So this is in addition to the 2 other vehicles you're trying to replace.
Yes, so we would still have the 2 on order, which are also coming from Morrow Brothers. Fortunately, we were able to catch them, they're able to kind of redirect one of these, they get inbound cars, and every now and again they have, maybe an extra 1 or 2, or somebody doesn't take one. So we kind of spoke with them right at the right time, and we were able to secure a vehicle. The only other 2 we found were, one was questionable, which is now possibly available, but it's a lot more at almost $47,000. And the other one was possibly out in Tulsa somewhere that I had seen online. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not Tulsa, Illinois, if there is one. So clearly, it's been very difficult finding vehicles. We were fortunate with Morrow Brothers to, hopefully help us get this one in the next couple of weeks as well. So.
We almost came to you looking for the authority to just go on a scout mission to find vehicles, but we just happened, the timing worked. I mean, we found this last week.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Just fell in the lap, kind of, yeah.
That quick, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I think we got one coming in a few weeks. We're like,
Grab it.
let's try to hold it as fast as we can. So that's where we're at.
Good. And so I didn't know that, but IRMA is basically our insurance equivalent provider, right?
Yes. Affectionately called IRMA.
IRMA.
That's the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency. It's like a 72-member risk management pool, but it's got its authority through the state statutes. And it's, yeah, it's general liability, workers' comp, employment liability.
Cool. For a French guy, Arma is a lot easier to say. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
So I'm sorry, I was trying to keep, do we have a first and second for this yet? Motion yet?
Yes, we do. We do?
I don't know that we do.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Check our work.
This is item 18, so is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. And it is a roll call vote.
Okay. Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
And Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Thank you. Next would be item 19, a resolution approving updates.
To be clear, I didn't have to ask the president to participate in that, did I not?
It's a resolution.
Yep, no, okay, thank you. Sorry.
Item 19 is a resolution approving updates to the Village of Lake Bluff 2023 to 2024 official pay plan. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. On April 22nd, 2023, the Village Board of Trustees approved the Village Official Pay Plan, which included the authorized pay ranges and number of regular full-time positions for the fiscal year 2023-2024 period. More specific to law enforcement personnel, this pay plan authorized 10 patrol officers and 3 police sergeants. With a recent approval of a collective bargaining agreement with the police patrol officers and sergeants, the village will be moving from an 8-hour schedule to a 12-hour schedule, which will necessitate 1, the addition of a sergeant from 3 to 4 sergeants, 2, the elimination of a patrol officers from 10 to 9, and 3, a new pay range for the new part-time police patrol officers. At this time, the promotion process is beginning for the new sergeant position, and the village is still looking to fill 2 existing patrol officers vacancies, and the police department will begin advertising for part-time officers shortly. Village staff will be present on Monday night to answer any questions from the Board of Trustees.
Peter, voice vote or roll call for this? It's pay scale, but no, not
Oh,
that.
roll call vote.
Are there any comments on this item? And I do not see any, so it's a roll call.
Okay. Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Cole.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Thank you. We, of course, processed item 20, and the next item would be item 21, that is our trustees' report. Do any trustee need to wish to make a report tonight? And I do not see any people yelling, "I want to be heard." So it's a long meeting, okay? So next item would be maybe our executive session. Do we have an executive session
We
tonight?
do,
And
to talk about that and that.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
So may I have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing personal matters pursuant to the Illinois Open Meeting Act, and that upon the adjournment of the closed session, this regular meeting will be deemed to automatically be adjourned by the same vote without the conduct of any further business.
And to be crystal clear, it's collective negotiating as well as employee performance and compensation of certain employees.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This is a roll call.
Trustee Hatch? Aye. Thank you. Trustee Cole?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
And Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Thank you. And so this concludes the open part of the Village Board meeting. Thank you to anyone in attendance, and have a great evening.